Hello and welcome back once again to Organic Cardboard. My name is Owen Kneep, and today I am going back into the Troll Kingdom's mountain, or the old Troll Kingdom mountain, with In the Hall of the Mountain King. Now, you may remember me going over Fall of the Mountain King. Fall of the Mountain King came out after In the Hall of the Mountain King, a couple years after, I believe, and then In the Hall of the Mountain King is the events that were actually preceding Fall of the Mountain King, even though, again, this game came out earlier. So, In the Hall of the Mountain King, also produced by Burnt Island Games, created by Jay Cormier and Graham Johns. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, or this next name for the artist is Kwan Chai Moria. Again, maybe I'm pronouncing that correctly, I don't know. But In the Hall of the Mountain King is rated for ages 12 and up. It's 2 to 5 players. There is a solo module that you can purchase for the game, but otherwise it's 2 to 5, and has a suggested rating of 90 minutes. Now, with these suggested ratings of time play, I don't really know what they're doing on these board games a lot of the time, because even as an experienced player, I think 90 minutes is pretty tight to be able to play this game in. We played it with 4 people a couple days ago, and it took us about 4 hours. And 2 of those people were completely new, so there was a rules teach, and one of the people had not played it in a while, so I was the only one that actually was up on the rules. But even with that, it was a quick teach for me. I thought it was fairly easy to teach after having played it before, but it still took about 4 hours with 4 people. But In the Hall of the Mountain King, what you're going to be doing is you are going back into the collapsed Troll Kingdom that the events of Fall of the Mountain King took place in. So in Fall of the Mountain King, the gnomes were coming in and invading the Troll Kingdom and running them out of their original place there. And so the end of that game ended with all of the trolls kind of taking off and going into hiding. And then the gnomes came in, ransacked the place, and just left it all collapsed. So now in the Hall of the Mountain King, what you're doing is you're going back into the mountain, you're re-excavating out this whole mountain, including these new tunnels, you're rededicating great halls, you're finding your old statues of glory and placing them in the most pristine and optimal places where they're going to be judged to be the most worthy and ultimately give you the most points at the end of the game. So, and the Hall of the Mountain King is a polyomino placement, resource engine cascading kind of mechanic that's going on in the game. You are attempting to gain resources in order to build out these polyomino kind of tunnel pieces as you go, so they all have that kind of Tetris look to them. And as you go, you are getting deeper and deeper into the center of the mountain, and you're again finding these different statues that are going to be worth more points if you can place them further into the center of the mountain. And otherwise, you are obtaining money to recruit additional trolls, as well as hammers to bust up rubble, and these little rune crystals that you use to complete these spells that can kind of break the game rules in different ways. So the main mechanic that you're dealing with in the game is this Troll's Moot, they call it. So on your player board, when you set up the game, you're going to have 4 trolls that are going to be your starting trolls. Everybody gets the same little deck of cards. They'll start with 6, and then they'll go through a draft where they pull 2 off of that shuffled deck. They pick one of their trolls to place into one of these 4 starting locations that creates this kind of base of a pyramid. And each one of those different trolls is going to have a starting resource that it begins with that you'll gain immediately, and then your player board shifts up a little bit to cover those, and then you have these ongoing resources that could be produced or will be produced as the game continues. Each of your turns, you are either building a tunnel with resources that you already have, or you are recruiting a troll. So when you recruit trolls, you've got 3 tiers of trolls that you can recruit from. So there's level 1 trolls, there's level 2 trolls, and level 3 trolls, and they subsequently give you more resources, but they're also more expensive to get to those higher level trolls. The level 1 trolls are free, so everybody can always get something, but the level 2 trolls, anytime you take a troll that's in a higher tier, you have to bribe all of the trolls below it in order to allow you to get that higher value troll and recruit them into your work camp, I guess. It is easier to see on the board, but when you have these different layers of trolls laid out, they're also going to be kind of laid in a pyramid where you got 5 of those level 1 trolls to select from, and then you got 4 level 2 trolls to select from, and 3 level 3 trolls to select from. And so every time you get one of the trolls that are above other trolls, every troll below it that follows out into that pyramid shape, you have to place a gold coin on, or a copper coin. I don't know what kind of coins these trolls are using. I guess it's probably more of a copper coin. And then you place them on each of those trolls below it. So the level 2 trolls are going to cost you essentially 2 coins in order to get them, and then the level 3 trolls will actually cost you 5, because for every level 3 you have to bribe 2 level 2s and 3 level 3s. So going back to the Troll's Moot, you've got 4 trolls that you start the game with, and they're kind of like the base of your pyramid in your Troll's Moot. Every time you place a new troll onto a space in your Troll's Moot, it's going to be placed in between and above other trolls, at least 2 trolls that it's going to be placed directly above. And whenever you do that, you are going to gain resources that are listed on that particular troll that you recruited, as well as each of the trolls below it. However, if you already have resources on those trolls that were below it, then they don't gain additional resources. They only gain up to whatever's listed on their card. So during the game, you're having to contend with your efficiency of movement with your actions, because ideally you want to spend those resources before you cause one of these cascades to happen in your Trolls Moot. Now once you get to the very top, you're going to have a layer of 4, and then there will be a layer 3 above that, 2 above that, and one final troll at the very top, which means that last one will be the last cascade that happens, and it'll activate all of your trolls. That will begin the coronation event. And so in the coronation event, in a 3-player or higher game, you're going to have 2 of these tokens. And so the first person that gets to that coronation event will gain 5 points at the end of the game. And then the second person will get a 3-point coin, and then everybody else is just not going to get anything. But those coronation events, the first one that happens will trigger the end game. So at the for the end game to occur, as soon as somebody places a coronation troll down at the top of their Trolls Moot pyramid, that'll finish that round out, and then you'll get 2 additional rounds in order to gain as many points as you can and kind of scramble for those last point gains that you can make happen. So you're having to kind of contend with the ability of the other people to beat you out quicker on that coronation event. So you're always having to decide between either building or gaining a troll. Sometimes you'll have to gain a troll before you really want to, or before it's the most efficient to do so. But you just have to kind of balance that out and see how it works best for you. It's not always the most optimal thing to just run straight to that coronation event at the end. Sometimes you won't even ever hit it, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose. So as you place these tiles out onto your board, you are going to have opportunities to get closer to the center of the board, or you might have opportunities to just place these tiles in sections where they're going to kind of create like a chunk of tiles that are going to open up space for you to place a Great Hall. When you place a Great Hall down, you get to do that at the end of your turn, and it's a free action to just complete one of those, and there are a limited number of Great Halls, and they're all kind of in these different shapes, going from a 2x2 square up to a 4x4 square, and kind of all the different variations between those sizes as well. The bigger ones are going to give you more points, and then they'll give you additional points if you can place a statue on the altar that is in each one of those Great Halls. So as you are excavating out these tunnels, these statues are already on the board, but they're buried. And then once you have a tunnel placed where a statue is at, it then is unburied, and it sits on top of whatever that space was that it was originally at. At that point, if you have these carts, you'll get these little carts as a resource, like little wheelbarrows, and you can use those carts to move those statues one tile at a time for every cart that you spend on it. However, some of those carts are specific to only one statue type, and then there's also wild carts that can be used on any of the 3 different kinds of statues. So you're placing these tunnels out, you're popping these statues up into your space, and then you're trying to move them into the most optimal places. If you place those on the altar spaces, again, of those Great Halls, they're going to give you quite a bit more points than what the Great Hall would give you without a statue on it. The most points, though, that you're going to get for statues, though, are if you can place them on pedestals, and specifically if you can place them on pedestals closer into the center of the mountain itself. So this mountain is got color denominated rings, essentially, that get tighter as you get closer into the center of the mountain. And each one of those progressive colors, it's going to go from dark gray to light gray to red to orange and yellow. The yellow spaces are going to be worth the most. They're right around the very center of the mountain. However, there are a lot of rubble spaces around that, and you have to spend a hammer every time you build in a location that has rubble. And so hammers are going to be pretty vital resources for you, especially once you get past the first couple of rounds. You're going to really want to make sure you have some ways to produce hammers in one way or another. but you're breaking through those rubble places, and if you can get a pedestal with a statue on it in the center of the board, they're worth 20 points, which is pretty huge. Normally this game is going to probably end closer to 100 points, but I had a really big game on the last one where it was like 125, and I think that was the most that I've scored on the game before. But normally it's probably going to be closer to 100, just depending on how everybody gets in each other's way as the game goes, because as you're building your networks of tunnels out, they can never touch each other between one player to another. But as whenever you build a tile, you are also going to have these anchor points on these tiles. So most of the tiles have a little hole in them, and this little hole is going to be an anchor point that a pedestal can be placed on. Now you got to think how you're going to get the pedestals in the first place in order to place on these anchor points. Well, you get those from recruiting your trolls. All of the level 2 trolls are going to have a pedestal that comes out that's randomly drawn from a little draw bag that you place on each one of those. So it's going to be one of the 3 different color types for the different statues. And then all of the level 3 ones have a wild pedestal. So essentially whenever you take a level 3 troll, you can just search through the bag and find the pedestal type that you want. The pedestals are also limited too, so you've only got, I think, 5 of each type in the game. So as the game goes on, you may even find that everybody's already got the pedestals that you need, and so even if you get that wild type, you're not going to be able to find that particular color. So going back to those anchor points on the tiles, when you place a tile down, only at that point can you then place a pedestal that's in your storage onto that location. And when you place a pedestal, when you choose to do so, that pedestal is kind of there forever. You can't move it like you can move the statues. But these pedestals are going to have locations on the board that are going to correlate with this track, and this track is randomly selected throughout the game. When you set up the beginning of a game, you're going to have a random assortment of points that each one of those pedestals is worth, depending on what level of the whole mountain that it is located in. So if it's wherever you're placing that pedestal at, you can only have one of each color type in each ring, so you can only have one fire, one ice, and one moon pedestal in each of the gray located, the dark gray, the light gray, and then the red, orange, and yellow. And you can look at the end of the game; it'll show you how many points those are worth. They're not a whole lot of points by themselves. They only go from 1 to 4 points. Again, kind of randomly assorted as far as what they're worth on each one of those rings. However, if you can get a pedestal close into the center, especially if you can get it right on the center in that yellow ring, and then you have enough carts to move that color's statue onto that place, it's worth 20 points at the end of the game. And those are some of the highest scoring points you can not necessarily easily get to, but maybe amass a little bit more than some of the other points in the game. Now those great halls that you produce, whenever you're placing these tiles out on the board, these different tunnels, and they're kind of laying up close to each other, eventually, again, you're going to have these chunks of spaces where you've got tiles laid up, and you've got square or rectangular places in order to place those great halls. You can then choose one of that size, and then nobody else is going to be able to get that size. And it will then bump up anything that's any of those statues that are underneath of it. If you already had a statue on one of those hallways, then it'll pop up onto that Great Hall location. Now there's a specific square within each one of those Great Halls that's an altar space. And so if you then need to, you can move. You can use a cart to move that particular statue or any other statue onto that altar space in that location. And you're spending carts. You can only move them one space for every cart. So your great halls are kind of considered one big space, and so if you need to move them within that space, that's one cart. And then for every tile that the statue needs to move through after that, including your starting tile, which is like your gate tile. Those all count as one movement. And so if you have a bunch of little tile spaces that they have to move through, it can get pretty expensive to move those statues around. So maybe you want to do that a little earlier in the game before they start getting segmented, because when you place your Great Hall down, it's going to leave little extensions off of that. And so a space that was just one polyomino tunnel could then become two separate tiles that sit around a Great Hall. And so it may increase the amount of movement that you have to use in order to move one of your statues around the board. So there's all that you're playing with. Those pedestals, again, that you've placed down on those anchor points. If you have to be kind of judicial about when you choose to claim a Great Hall. Maybe you want to claim it before other people get to it. But if you place it over a place that has a pedestal, that pedestal is now just tossed out of the game, and it's not going to be worth any points at the end of the game. However, again, those statues don't go away. So ideally, you want to get some of those trolls into your Trolls Moot little pyramid that are going to come with pedestals that you can use, and you save those in your storage in order to use those as you get closer into the center of the board as the game goes on, and then move those statues onto it for the big points. Now, when we talk about storage, your Trolls Moot, as you place a troll down into the Trolls Moot, it's again cascading and filling up all of these resources along those places where those trolls are sitting underneath that troll, as well as that troll that you just took. Those resources are kind of stuck on the Trolls Moot, so they're stuck on the cards that they've cascaded down onto. And where that's going to make a difference is that they're filling up those spaces. So if you don't spend those resources off of the Trolls Moot first before you do a cascade, you're not going to get as many resources as you could have for that cascading action. But there are going to be opportunities to store resources off your Trolls Moot and then just place them in your common storage that you can actually save for a later portion of the game. So one of the main ways that you're doing that is by building workshops. So every time you start the game out, you're going to have a kind of a random assortment of workshops that are available to be built. And these workshops are going to go from, you're going to have 2 plus 1, or you have 2 workshops available plus 1 for every, 2 workshops per player, and then plus 1 additional one. So if you have a 4-player game, there's 9 available workshops. Every time you're placing a tunnel location, there are some easy to see locations that can't be built over with tunnels that are workshop locations. They kind of have this little like X that's on these squares of this grid of the map. When you place a tunnel next to one of those workshop locations, you can then choose from any of the available workshops for that game and place them into that location. And what workshops are going to do is they're going to allow you to trade resources out for other resources in general. There's some that do things like they just allow you to store an item, but most of them are going to allow you to trade one item for another one. So like you've got 3 different types of building materials. You've got stone, you've got iron, and you've got this other precious stone called heartstone. And you might have the ability to trade out 1 stone for an iron, or vice versa, an iron for a stone. And the reason why you're wanting to do that is because anytime you're building a tunnel out, you will get points based off of the size of that tunnel. It'll show you on your player board how many points they're worth, and they're going to be worth more points if you're using higher quality resources. However, any of those tiles that you do place out, they have to be built by only using 1 resource type. So they either have to all be stone, they have to all be iron, they have to all be that heartstone, and you'll get more points if you, like the most points you'll get is by building everything out of heartstone, but the heartstone is harder to get, and so you may be able to build quicker and build more tunnels if you're focusing more on the stone and the iron as you go. Now, again, going back to those workshops, though, you're trading. You can trade these resources out to benefit you. You might trade resources out for hammers. You might trade resources out for those rune crystals or carts. And when you are activating a workshop, it's going to have 4 sides because it's a square. And for every side that is covered by a tile, including like a great hall or something like that, it will allow you to activate it that many times. So you could activate it up to 4 times, and you're getting the opportunity to activate a workshop at the beginning of your turn. So at the beginning of your turn, you can choose to activate any workshop that's connected to one of your networks. And then even if somebody else is also connected to that workshop, remember I said before that you can't connect 2 networks together directly, but the workshop itself is not necessarily a part of your network. So other people can actually connect to that workshop and use it as well. But at any length, as you're using a workshop, you'll get to activate it for every side that's covered next to it, essentially. So even if somebody else is covering 2 of those sides and you're covering 2 of those sides, you could activate that 4 times, which could be really helpful if you're gaining a bunch of cheap stone and you want to turn it into more valuable iron to do your buildings with, so you get more points on each of those tunnels. Now the other thing that you are going to be able to do at the beginning of your turn is you're also going to get to choose a spell if you have a rune in order to spend on the spells, and the spells are going to be randomly placed out. You'll get 3 available spells for everybody to use at the beginning of the game, and then each round somebody can activate one once, and once that spell has been activated a 3rd time, at the end of that activation, then that spell will go away. It'll go back to the bottom of the deck, and you'll draw a new one out. So everybody's usually wanting to use those spells pretty often. They're pretty powerful. They'll allow you to do things like break certain rules in the game. Like maybe you'll be able to build a tunnel for 1 resource less, or you'll be able to build 2 tunnels, or you might be able to score like a statue that's placed in your network somewhere before the end of the game, so you can kind of double score it. So there's some really powerful spells, and everybody's going to be excited to see what that next spell is too when that 3rd placement is put on it, because that person's not going to be able to use the spells for the rest of their turn, whoever finished that last activation, and everybody else is going to get an opportunity to use that new spell. So it's always dynamic in that sense, and creates a lot of extra fun in the game. So the turn structure of the game that we're already starting to go off of is we're saying at the beginning of the turn you can choose to do 1 workshop or 1 spell, or you can do those vice versa. You can do a spell first and then a workshop, whatever works best for you. Sometimes you need to do a workshop in order to get a rune to do a spell, and you can do that. And then after that happens, you will have to choose whether you're going to build a tunnel or recruit a troll into your trolls moot. And then after that, you'll get to choose if you want to dedicate a great hall. And then the 4th thing that you can do after that is move statues around. So that's the general game progression. That's how everything's going to play out. You're just continuing to take these turns until somebody hits that coronation event. You finish that round, you go through 2 more rounds. Then the end of the game happens. You add up your points, all those in-game points, as well as any points that were scored for each tunnel as you go throughout the game. And then whoever has the most points is going to win. So let's talk about the components of the game. The game that I have out is the deluxe component version of the game. Now, I did start with the retail version of this game, and then I had the opportunity during the Kickstarter for Fall of the Mountain King in order to purchase the deluxe components. I'm not sure if those are readily available for you to purchase, but if you can purchase the deluxe versions of the resources for this game, I would highly recommend it. I think the game is well worth getting some deluxe components for it. So keep an eye out for those if you are interested in this game. You might start with the retail just to see if you like the game, which I think you're going to like it. But try that out first, and then maybe quickly start looking for some deluxe components, because they are really nice. The base components for the game just include these little squares for all of the resources, as well as just some simple cardboard tokens for everything else. The coins are just cardboard tokens, and then I think the carts and the hammers are as well, if I remember correctly, in the runes. The deluxe components are going to include, again, specially shaped resources, little wooden resources for each of the building materials. You've got kind of these commonly used little crystal pieces for the runes. You've got nice little model kind of miniatures for the hammers, as well as these carts that you use. The carts are really cute. They look like little wheelbarrows. And then you have some nice chunky coins too that are going to be used for those bribes throughout the game. And they feel nice. They look like something that a troll would stamp out. They're pretty simple and they're thick too, so they feel nice as you placing them out. And then one of the best components that comes with the deluxe version are the statues and pedestals. So they look a whole lot nicer than the retail version. The retail version uses like these wooden meeples. So there's just like kind of basic stamped out looking wooden meeples with different outlines. And then the pedestals are just these little chunks of wood that are shaped in the base of the pedestal shape. But the deluxe version has these nice plastic molded components, and the statues are going to be themed toward whatever clan type. So you've got ice, moon, and fire, and they all are shaped in a way that's very reminiscent of those three elements or types. And then the pedestals have these nice little rune shapes around them, and one of the nicest things is that each of the statues just nestles right into each of the pedestals, so it looks really nice and feels good when you put those together. And then one of the other kind of unnecessary but still cool components with the deluxe version is that you get this little throne for the first player marker. And the only time the first player marker is relevant is for the end of the game, so whoever starts the game out, it's again going to denote how much of that round is played out once somebody does a coronation event, and then the additional rounds will be played off of that first player marker. Now this throne that they give you is pretty silly, because I mean, you know, Game of Thrones has the Iron Throne that's supposed to be uncomfortable to sit in, but man, this looks really uncomfortable to sit in. There's no butt placement. It's kind of all sloped up. It looks like it's made out of chunky riveted metal. And even for a troll, I would think that this would be pretty uncomfortable to sit on. You've got little rivets that would stick up right into your butt. And there's nothing comfortable looking about this, but it still looks cool. It's very thematic to a crude style, rough troll's throne. Otherwise, the other part of the deluxe components are going to include these nice game trays, and they're pretty good. They're not the best game trays I've seen, because they have nice locations for each of these different resources, but when you put the lid on this and you go to shake it around, like if the game's getting flipped upside down and moved on its side and upside down, it has a little too much space. It has the wording is kind of raised up where it has the logo and everything at the top of this. And so some of those pieces will actually get tossed over into the other locations in the game tray. So, I mean, it looks cool, the top looks cool, but it's not the most practical. The section, though, that has all of the tiles is really nice. It has little polyomino placement spots for each one of the tiles, as well as these places for all of the great halls to lay flat. When you're putting the game up, they nestle into each other, and then they can sit upright when you're playing the game, so that you can easily see the points that they're worth and see which ones are still available very quickly and easily. So that's a little better than the resource tray. And otherwise, there's another additional tray to put in the bottom of the box that will hold the cards, it'll hold the statues, and will hold the extra workshop tokens and all the different players' setup pieces, as well as their little point tracker and their little starting gates. But that one's not that great either, because it doesn't hold sleeve cards real well, so they get kind of shuffled around easily in the game. And especially if there's a couple extra modules that you can get for the game that are going to include like a solo version of the game that has kind of its own little campaign that you can play through, and then there's some champions that you can get. So you got a champions module, which will essentially give everybody a special power that they can do throughout the game. Like one of them allows you to use like a different resource for every time you're building a tunnel out. You can choose one resource that can be the incorrect resource to build with, things like that. And then other little great game breaking abilities that one person will get to use. So it looks neat. I like to play it with that the next time I play the game, but I haven't actually used those yet. They don't really sit very well in the game tray. So all that stuff gets shuffled around easily if this game isn't laying flat. So as far as a game tray, I mean, it is really nice to sort everything as you're playing the game, but it's not that great for storage. So it's, I don't know, 7 out of 10 for the game tray, because I do really like the game trays. It is made by Game Trays themselves, but it's not the best game tray I've seen. However, the retail version of the components are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. You'll be able to play the game just essentially the same way. It's just going to be a little harder to keep everything sorted out. But overall, this is a game that I really love. It's 8.5 out of 10. It's right in that category of games that I'm very excited to keep in my game collection. I'm going to be very happy to get it out anytime somebody wants to play it. It's a medium weight game. It's not hard to learn. All of the concepts in the game are pretty quick to teach. I didn't feel last time that I taught a couple people and kind of retaught the other person that was playing, I didn't have any issue teaching it. I think they all got it pretty quickly. A few questions, but nothing that really was complicated to understand. So it's fairly easy to teach. The hard part of the game is just going to be learning how to do your movements as efficiently as possible. It's a very spatial game. So you're having to contend with how you are Tetrising out your pieces and paying for those, and then moving pieces around on the board. So it's again very space oriented and location oriented. So you're really having to contend with that as you're playing the game. But I think if you like games that are spatial games that are going to include a resource production with an interesting engine component for this cascading trolls moot that you're using, and you like troll themes, you like that kind of anti-hero, that opposite side playing for the quote-unquote bad team and making those then the good guys, I think you're really going to enjoy this game. I love the way that the board gets built out as everybody's playing. I've played this 2 players. It's fine. I enjoy it at 2 players, but I enjoyed it much more playing it at a 4-player count, because the board will start to get really like filled up, and I would imagine at a 5-player game even more so. So a lot more player interaction the higher the number of players that you play with. This is set for on the 4 to 5 player side, but there's also a side for the 3 players as well, up to 3 players as well. So there are 2 sides to the board that you can play on. But anyways, I really enjoyed this a lot. One of the best metrics that I use for a game, if it's a good game or not, is that feeling that you get after playing the game. So whether I've won this game or I've lost this game when I've played it, I've always felt really good after having played it. I always felt like it was very satisfying, very enjoyable. It's an excellent puzzle. So again, if you like games that you have to puzzle a lot of things out in as you play, this is going to be one of those games for you. So anyways, check it out. In the Hall of the Mountain King, 8.5 out of 10. Highly recommend it. And as always, I thank you guys so much for stopping by today. And if you enjoy this kind of content, a couple of those free clicks on the screen can always really help support channels like mine. So I really appreciate it if you do. But otherwise, I hope you guys are just having an excellent day, and I hope you are enjoying the games that you have, and I hope that you will enjoy in the Hall of the Mountain King if you try it out. So keep an eye out for more videos like these. Also check out my videos with and without, with and without myself over at Pecktec Games with Sean. But at any length, thank you so much for stopping by. I will see you guys on the next video. Take care. Till then, bye-bye.